When you've completed a project, it's a great idea to do a post-implementation project review to work out what you did well and what should be changed for next time to avoid mistakes. However, on your business, you should also be doing regular reviews, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually, depending on the size and structure of your business and what you're up to. I do recommend that you always complete a business review before making major changes in your business. So before hiring, before outsourcing, before making major goal and strategy reviews, this is a great time to review your business. In today's episode of the FAQ Business Podcast, we're going to cover a simple review process, a time log, which can lead to process change, and handling repetitive tasks more efficiently before looking to outsource. Welcome to the FAQ Business Podcast for growing small to medium business owners who want to make a positive difference. The FAQ Business Podcast covers 4 key pillars: actionable education, inspiring leaders, businesses like you for relatability, and thought leadership, where we really challenge your thinking. It's hosted by myself, Jane Tweedy, founder and lead trainer of FAQ Business Training, where we want to avoid you getting ripped off or ripping yourself off because of what you don't know you don't know. We'll feature an amazing diversity of guests with lots to offer to educate and inspire you. Today's episode of the FAQ Business Podcast is brought to you by myself, Jane Tweedy, founder of FAQ Business Training and the FAQ Business Podcast. I have been involved in project reviews and business strategic reviews for volunteer organizations, corporate departments, and for small business. Today, we're going to cover how to complete a really simple business review. A more complex review will be available through our online school, including a business diagnostic. Simple project or business reviews allow us to identify issues so that we can stop or change things, or start or continue things, and take advantage of learning from our mistakes. Episode 3 of the FAQ Business Podcast, we showed you 10 of our mistakes. So if you'd like to check those out, please check out that podcast. Completing a project or a business evaluation. It's really important to be quite critical here. Not negatively critical, however, we want to look at it realistically, and we want to get a good idea of what worked well and what did not, so that we can learn from our mistakes and make changes into the future. We're always working on that progression, not perfection, always looking to make improvement into the future. The size of your business will affect the frequency that you need to do reviews. After every major project, and even when it's not actually a project, but it was more an enforced situation, like a COVID lockdown, it's a great time to do a post-implementation review. What worked well? What things did you learn during that period of time? What things can you apply into the future and carry forward and continue? What things do you need to stop? And what things would you change if you had to do it again? Before updating your goals and your strategy, I strongly recommend doing an exercise to do a project or a business evaluation. Firstly, what worked well? What should you continue doing? There's always something in a project or a business that is working really well. And look, for instance, at the COVID lockdown. There may be things that you now do well that you didn't even know that you did well. For instance, you might have started offering online classes. So maybe you were offering online Pilates classes. Rather than just stopping them for the future, could you continue offering those as an alternative for people that don't want to come in person? Or could you even expand those services further into a new market, like, for instance, rural Australia? Going into that rural area or into an offshore destination, it gives you so many more choices. So think about how you could use that to your advantage. Really think about what you want to continue doing into the future rather than just cutting something off. What worked badly? We always can learn from our mistakes. And isn't the sign of insanity repeating the same mistakes over again? So we really don't want to repeat mistakes. So we're going to look for two things here with things that worked badly. What things do we need to stop because they were the wrong tactic? They were just so bad, we really have to stop them. And alternatively, what things do we need to change the execution on? Things that we need to make change to rather than stop completely. So you've got two things here, stop or change. What do I mean by tactic and execution? A tactic is typically when we do the wrong thing. So for instance, flyers for most people are the wrong thing to do. If you do flyers, you're likely to get very little response, because think about what you do when you receive your flyers. Do you just chuck them in the bin or chuck them in the recycling bin? Most of us do that. We don't even really look at them. We might have a quick flick through or we don't look at them at all. So think about how that plays out. If your audience is going to be a person that's just going to chuck them out, and in fact, it might even antagonize them or make them angry because they, feel that you are wasting the environment and wasting resources, that's not a good idea. So what can you stop doing? For some businesses, flyers do work. For instance, think about, do you have menus from cafes sitting in your kitchen cupboards? I know some of us do. We have the pizza menu or whatever, so we can pick a pizza. So some businesses, flyers still work. I'm not saying they don't work totally, but make sure you know your audience and whether a flyer is actually a good tactic for you. Most of the time, however, the tactic is not the issue, it's the execution. For instance, people say to me all the time, Facebook ads don't work. Facebook ads do work pretty well. However, you need to execute them well. You need to execute the ad side well as where they're going to, the landing side. Where are they landing on, and therefore does the ad actually convert? So there's two parts to the process, but it's all to do with changing that execution. So with something that didn't work, identify any opportunities to make change and improvement or what we need to stop going forward. The last part of the business review is the business opportunities that have been created. What things can we start doing in business that are going to take advantage of these opportunities? Like I said, it could be taking advantage of the fact that we can now go online a lot more. So it might be taking advantage of new localities. Or it might be something completely new. It might be now offering digital downloads. It might be starting up an e-commerce shop. Think about what will work for your business. We had a tea time tip on creating alternative income streams. Maybe have a look at that and see if you've got any ideas from that. But here we are looking at things you can start doing. So as I said, this is a very simple business review. All we've looked at is 4 key areas. What can we continue doing? What can we stop doing? What can we change? And what can we start doing? So it's a very simple review. An additional step for a business review, especially where you have issues around productivity or you are feeling really stretched and you're at capacity and you're considering hiring or outsourcing, an additional step is to complete a time log. I strongly suggest completing a time log for a 2-week period and a normal 2-week period at that. Don't do a time log for a period, school holidays or a lockdown or something, which is abnormal because you just won't generate the right information. So like anything, information is king. Information helps us make decisions, and that is why we do it. I'm going to cover time log in a future tea time tip, so I'm going to go into it in a bit more detail there. So if you are a bit stuck on this process, keep an eye out for those. They are our live trainings we do a couple of times a month on Facebook and on LinkedIn, so definitely look out for those. Basically what a time log is we're going to record every 15 minutes. So, lawyers and accountants and that, they tend to charge you out like that. But we're just going to keep it simple. Again, we just don't want to overly complicate it here. So all you're going to do is create a sheet, just say an Excel or something like that. But you can just create it on a piece of paper in front of you to start with. And basically every 15 minutes, just make a check against what area you worked on. So was it administration? Was it Facebook marketing? Was it onboarding new client? Was it dealing with client A to client B, whatever? Allocate out your times. The great thing about this is you're going to really understand how much time you genuinely take to do something, because often we overestimate our capabilities. We think we can do something so much quicker than we can. And you might find things like simple emails, for instance. You might have thought sending a new client an email took you 2 minutes. Maybe it takes you 10 minutes. Maybe it takes you 15 minutes. So if we know that, then we can work on repetitive tasks like that and go, how can we streamline this? How can we automate it to make it a much more efficient system? Time logs are brilliant because it helps us to work out, is our pricing correct? We can work out how to handle repetitive tasks more effectively. And before we outsource or hire, we need to know what type of activities we need to hire or outsource. But we also need to work on our processes because there's no point outsourcing a rubbishy process. All you're going to do is spend money on something that shouldn't have been done in the first place. Plus, remember, for many small businesses, we need to look at small business automation. Often when we start out on a shoestring budget. So we kind of go, that's going to be $30 a month. I don't want to pay for it. What we need to do now is go, okay, we're a bigger business now. Maybe that $30 a month is well worth it. So over time, we start paying for things that we didn't pay for initially. An example, as I mentioned, was emails. I had emails that I was sending out and I was thinking, it takes about a minute to do, right? I timed it. It took 10 minutes to send these emails out. And I was sending out about 10 of these a week. So what I did was I created a signature. I was using Outlook, so signature worked well. And I could just create drop-down signatures for lots of different things. New meeting, meeting notes, new sign up. So I had different ones for different things. In Google, you can do things like canned responses. So just see what you have in your system. So they can be canned responses, templates, or signatures. Just see what works best for you. But it's great to do that. And what I tend to work on the basis of add more in there that you don't necessarily need every time, and then just remove the piece out that you don't need for that particular client. So much easier just to delete a block than to add additional blocks in. It just takes so much more time to do that. We can look for workarounds where we were doing a workaround. So maybe you didn't take on an accounting system to start. Maybe you're using Excel. Okay, well, maybe that worked at the start, but maybe you've got more transactions now and an accounting system would be a much more effective use of your time. So this has got to start weighing up and go, okay, if that accounting system is going to cost me $50 a month, that's, an hour of my time or whatever. Is that 8 hours of my time? You've just got to equate that and go, okay, I'm better off spending the money on the system than spending 8 hours mucking around. I'm losing money on that situation. So it helps us to look for things like process change. An example of time logging that actually had a beneficial impact in regards to the amount the person was actually making was a guy. He did the time log exercise to work out whether he needed to hire an IT person, a technician, or an administration person. He was an IT support professional. And what he did was after even the first day, he realized, oh my gosh, I have done 6 10-minute jobs for a client. 6 10-minute jobs he should be charging because that's an hour worth of time. And if we're doing an hour of work in a day for a client, we should be charging them. But because they were 10-minute jobs, he was sort of thinking, 10 minutes, I won't bother about it. But he realized those 10 minutes added up. So in his case, he could actually charge more automatically because he had the work to prove that he'd done it. Think about that sort of thing. We're also going to look at things like, are we calculating our pricing correctly? Because things do take longer than we think. Making sure that we've included our marketing and admin time in our pricing. All those sort of things come into it as well. And we will certainly be doing a lot of pricing courses on our online school. Process change can come from this time log exercise. What you're going to do after the end of the 2-week period, you're going to add up all your little ticks and say, how much did I do in each area? That will allow you, if you want to, if you do it in Excel, it will allow you to create pretty little graphs and things. So you can actually graphically represent and say, right, I spend 25% of my time talking to clients. I spend, 25% of my time doing administration tasks, whatever. So it lets you identify that and you can visualize it if you wish to. What we do from that is we then work out, like I said, are we pricing correctly? We can also work out what tasks do we need help with, what could we hire or outsource, and what tasks could we make changes to make process improvements to. Now, process improvements are not just for things like services. What about production lines? What about cafes? Think about the sequence in which you do your production. If people have to keep crossing different areas and go back and forward to get to the different things they need to make the product, it's going to not work effectively. You are going to be adding a lot of extra time to the process. So really think about the process sequence and making sure that your layout of your warehouse, the layout of your cafe is laid out so that you have a really good flow, because a good flow will cause less accidents. People won't be tripping over each other, and it will cause a lot more efficiency. So it actually improves productivity. So things like that are really important to look at. If you have improved your processes, if you have identified those repetitive tasks and you have looked at your small business automation, then you can look at outsourcing or hiring. It can actually be the one that does the process change and improvement. So do think about who you're going to bring in, because they may be able to do some of that for you, but you will need to get a lot of the stuff out of your head to be able to outsource it. And we will cover this in a future episode of the podcast, because it is a major issue. It isn't as easy as it first looks to outsource something. So, given our whole episode today has been about productivity hacks, we won't have a specialist productivity hack today. I hope today has just highlighted to you that a simple business process review is something that can be quite useful for us. So the simple review is just those 4 components. What are we going to start doing? What are we going to stop doing? What are we going to change? And what are we going to continue? In addition to that, we can do a time log to work out where and how we're spending our time and making it much more efficient. That could be looking at things like process change and business automation. Thank you for listening in to today's episode of the FAQ Business Podcast. We look forward to seeing you again in the future. Remember to subscribe on your favorite app and get the next episode of the FAQ Business Podcast. Catch you later. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the FAQ Business Podcast. Available on all good podcast services. You can subscribe today via faqbusinesspodcast.com.au or directly on Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, or Spotify. Subscribe, follow, share, and where able, review our podcast or leave us a comment on either YouTube or our blog page. Thanks for helping us to help you, the small to medium businesses who are growing and want to make a difference. Look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode of the FAQ Business Podcast.